Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, paints one of my favorite pictures. And it goes as follows. He writes, "I have a little dream. It goes like this. You're wandering through an enormous library. It has millions of books, and you're wandering through and you're looking at all of the titles, and then suddenly you're stopped in your tracks. There's a book, and on the title it's got your name. You take it out, you open it up, and you see that there are several hundred pages of that book, written by many different hands in many different languages. You try and work out what this book with your name on it is, and with a shock you realize that this book has been written by your ancestors. Every single one of them has written a chapter in this book telling their story and handing it to their children. And as you get to the end of the book, with a shock you see an empty page with your name on it, and you realize that this is the chapter that you have to write. Now you're in the middle of this library. Can you just put that book on the shelf, walk away, and forget it?" This image came to mind this week in light of the news of the imminent hostage release ceasefire deal about to take effect across Israel and Gaza. It is the story that we have not stopped thinking about, not stopped dreaming about, not been able to put down for 470 days now. The story has been tough, it has been difficult, it has been heartbreaking. It has been all-consuming as we've waded through the many pages and languages and chapters of this terrible war for the past 15, nearly 16 months. Yet now we stand on the brink of a new chapter, even while standing in the middle of the library, and we cannot walk, we cannot look away. This next chapter, according to Israeli media, our media, and social commentary, involves exchanging 33 hostages for many hundreds, if not thousands, of known terrorists, and IDF troop withdrawals from certain military zones, and promises of new negotiations, and so on and so forth. But I'm not here to go into the details of this Shabbat. I'm here to look at the story and its potential impact as it unfolds, God willing, according to plan, for it's hard to escape that sense that we are indeed living at a critical juncture in this sordid and sorrowful story. With Torah often guiding us to exactly where we need to be, and thank you, credit to Rabbi K for that piece of wisdom, it felt unsurprising that we land at Parashat Shemot this Shabbat, the beginning of a new book of Torah. In it we begin with the well-known story of Moses, born an Israelite in Egypt at a time when his people were enslaved. We learn of his childhood, of how he was placed in a basket of wicker, patched together with bitumen and pitch, and cast into the Nile by his mother Yocheved, picked up by the daughter of Pharaoh, and raised into the palace until he discovers his Israelite ancestry and runs away. Meeting God in the desert in a burning bush, he is the first to heed that sacred command, "Let my people go." The rest, as they say, is Torah. I often wonder, did Moses know that he too was living in, or indeed living out, a story? And not just any story, but the story. The one that would shape a nation, a people, a religion for millennia. The one that would, 5,000 odd years later, be the reason that we are all so on edge, feel the pull, that innate sense of knowing that this story of the hostages of our Israeli brothers and sisters is ours too. We, like Moses, are living out the story too in our own day and age. We know that we are living at a pivotal moment in time and space, and understand how much is hanging on this moment as we wait on tenterhooks for the next 36 to 48 hours. For our Israeli brothers and sisters, for us as Jews, and for a world that has seemingly been on fire for over a year now. Perhaps for you, like me, these last few days have felt like a fever dream, an intense rush of news and details and visions and possibilities as the story continues to be written. navigating a situation that feels almost biblical in proportion, the narrative of this deal is going to have many twists and turns. Some have and will feel like the cost was too high, too little return for the offer on the table, too much of a risk to open this chapter. They worry that it'll simply grant Hamas another chance to regroup and recruit before launching the next horrendous attack, whenever that may be or whatever that may look like. Still others feel like they would have done far more, paid a far higher price to reach this fragile arrangement. They believe that the war has gone on for too long, that these hostages should have been returned well before now, that the suffering has been too much, too immense to handle for both Israelis and innocent Palestinian civilians. To them, the story should have been closed, well finished by this point. The story, I sense, will continue to diverge over the coming weeks of ceasefire, assuming that it holds. And it will be natural to feel like we're stuck at a fork in the river bend. We may feel unbridled joy and relief and emotion as, God willing, we witness the hostages coming home in their purported small groups of 3 or 4, maybe a couple more, at a time, reunited with their families and loved ones, who have been waiting painfully and with a patience beyond belief to embrace them. We may feel devastated at the thought of the hostages who will be returned home as bodies, those who will be left behind, and the crushing loss of life for Israelis and Palestinians as a result of October 7 and the ensuing war. Just yesterday, on a call with the World Union for Progressive Judaism, the president, Rabbi Sergio Bergman, brought some of his own wisdom from Parashat Shmot and our current circumstances. He pointed out that the parasha opens with a listing of the lineage of Jacob, naming Jacob's 12 sons. It is after that that they are described as the Israelites, the people who struggle, as mentioned in Jacob's new name after he wrestles with the divine being. Rabbi Bergman expounded that it is a model of both the linkage to our past, our family names and ties, and the new identities, the new stories that we write for ourselves as our own lives come to be. This is what it means to be living in this story right now. It means being called to our shared fate, united by a common past and a common future, although we have struggled with and will continue to struggle with all that has happened. The hostages will never be the same. Their families will never be the same. Israel will never be the same, and we will never be the same. That being said, we pray that the central plot point, the return of the hostages for rehabilitation or for burial, will not waver. Liri, Daniela, Karina, Naama, and Agam, the 5 female soldiers, must have the chance to return to the trials and tribulations of teenagerhood, to be the vibrant young women they were once more. Kfir and Ariel must be able to return to preschool, to celebrate the next Sukkot in freedom with their grandparents, to dress up like Batman, to play with toy fire trucks, to be allowed to be children once again. Their names and their stories are linked to ours, for in the library of the Jewish people, it is the promise of freedom which is the chapter that stands out, the narrative thread that ties them all and ties us all together, exemplified by Exodus. Whilst their book, our book, is not yet closed, we await with bated breath as the next chapter, we fervently pray, begins. Baruch atah Adonai matir asurim, blessed are you, O God, who frees the captive. May it be so swiftly and speedily. Ken yehi ratzon, may it truly be God's will. Shabbat shalom.